When you're watching this video, you're either worried you may be laid off, you've already been laid off, or you simply want to prepare just in case something happens. And if you're in the last group, kudos to you. Preparing properly for a layoff could mean the difference between financial disaster and just a bump in the road. Today, we're going to talk about how to prepare for a layoff and what to do if you've been laid off. If you're new here, I'm Julie, your favorite finance coach. And my mission is to help you understand personal finance and hopefully one day attain financial freedom. The economy in 2025 is complicated to say the least. We're seeing major tech companies lay off tens of thousands of people at a time. Companies all around us are implementing restructuring plans, and AI is changing entire industries. Not only that, but major political and macroeconomic factors are impacting business decisions across the country. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen layoff announcements popping up across multiple sectors. Layoffs in and of themselves seem unpredictable, but there are actually steps that you can take to protect yourself in case something like this happens to you or a loved one. And there are even things that you can keep an eye out for to help predict if and when a layoff might happen to you. In this video, I'm going to walk you through three main topics. First, what to do to prepare before a layoff happens. Second, what to do the moment that you get laid off. And third, how to navigate the layoff in the aftermath. By the end of this video, you will have a complete preparation and action plan that will save you tens of thousands of dollars, but more importantly, tons of stress. So let's get into it. First, let's talk about the warning signs. Recognizing when layoffs may be coming is super important because they rarely come out of nowhere. Most companies know well in advance that layoffs are a possibility, and then they have to prepare to execute them. So let's talk about some company level warning signs. First, hiring freezes. If your company stops hiring or even slows down hiring significantly, that's usually a first red flag that layoffs may be coming. Companies that are doing this are trying to control costs. And if a hiring freeze does not attain the cost-cutting measures that they're targeting, layoffs will soon follow. Second is reorganizations or restructurings. When you hear about a strategic realignment, pay attention. A lot of times, even if the company does intend to do a complete restructuring, that usually means that layoffs are probably part of that plan. The third warning sign you should look out for are budget cuts. If your department or even your entire company's budgets get slashed, if you see restrictions on spending limitations, travel, or they stop spending money on perks and start cutting the little things, this is a sign that the company is trying to save money. Another thing you should look out for is executive departures. When C-suite individuals start leaving the company, leadership often sees the red flags and are in the loop on the plans long before anyone else. And whether they're departing by choice or by force, this could be a sign that layoffs are imminent. Another sign to look out for is merger and acquisition activity. If your company is being acquired or is acquiring another company, layoffs are almost always a part of that plan. When two companies merge together, there are oftentimes redundant positions that just make sense from a business perspective to eliminate. And finally, a more nuanced but still very relevant red flag to look out for is an increased focus on metrics and productivity. If your management team suddenly becomes obsessed with tracking your output, measuring everything, or implementing a new performance review process, they might be building documentation for layoffs. These red flags are at the company level, but there are also some red flags that you should look out for on a personal level. Warning signs you may be being individually targeted for a layoff include being excluded from meetings that you used to attend. If you used to be in the room when decisions were being made and suddenly you're being left off the meeting invite, that's a red flag. The second warning sign to look out for is if your responsibilities start being transferred to other people. If you find that parts of your job has been given away, or suddenly other people are being brought in to help you out when you've never needed help in the past, this might be a sign that you're being phased out. Another warning sign is when your boss stops giving you projects. If you're just maintaining the existing work that you've done previously, but you're not getting brought on to any new projects or given any new assignments, this may be a sign that you're on the layoff list. And finally, a sign that you may be on the layoff list is if you're being managed out. This warning sign is usually directly linked to your performance. If your boss suddenly becomes hypercritical of your work product, starts documenting everything that you do, or puts you on a performance improvement plan, this may be a sign that your management team is trying to build a case that you're being let go for cause, which means it's your fault based on your performance, and this will allow them to avoid paying you severance. Just because you see these signs does not mean you are definitely being targeted for a layoff. If you see these signs, I wouldn't recommend going to your management team in a panic. I would not recommend even letting them know that you're on to them. What I would recommend, however, is preparing in the background. So let's talk about things that you can do to prepare yourself for a potential layoff. Obviously, being laid off can create a huge financial burden. So, one of the most important things that you can do to prepare for a layoff is to prepare yourself financially. So, you need to build your emergency fund. And you guys have heard me say this 1,000 times. You need to have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved in an emergency fund. And in this current economy, you may want a little bit more. So, to figure out how much you need saved, you're going to take your bare minimum expenses. This includes things like rent, mortgage, transportation, electricity, food, insurance, and all of your minimum debt payments. You're going to add this up and see how much that comes out to on a monthly basis. And then you're going to want to save 3 to 6 or even 12 months of expenses to be safe. If you don't already have an emergency fund saved, you need to start aggressively saving for this now. In this current economy where people are being laid off left and right, you want to make sure that you're financially insulated to navigate any situations such as these. Next, you're going to want to maximize your employer benefits while you still have them. A lot of people are so worried when they think they're going to lose their job or when they actually get laid off that they don't even realize that there are benefits that they have now that they won't have forever. You want to maximize these benefits. Health insurance, for example. Schedule that annual physical and get it done before you get laid off. Go to the dentist, refill all your prescriptions, get your eyes checked. You don't know how long it's going to be until you have reliable medical and dental insurance again, so you want to make sure you take advantage of that before you lose it. And if you have an HSA, make sure you're using that money by the end of the year, otherwise you'll lose it. For an HSA, your money will remain yours after year's end and after you leave your company. So that money can be held onto past year's end. Contribute to your 401k as well. You want to make sure that you're getting your full company match before your departure. This is a bit tricky, however, because if you think you're going to be laid off, you don't want to put all of your liquid savings into your 401k. You need to have that emergency fund and some more liquid investments available just in case you need to draw on them during your layoff period. And then finally, capitalize on any professional development that your company offers. If you get a training budget, or if your company will pay for certain certifications. Consider embarking on some of these before your departure in order to make yourself more marketable in the job market after you leave your current company. These are just a few examples of the benefits that your company offers. Figure out exactly what benefits your company offers and what you're going to be losing once you've been laid off. Then try to capitalize on as many of them as possible. The next thing you're going to want to do if you think that you're at risk of being laid off is to document everything. You're going to want to have clear documentation of all of your accomplishments at your current company. You're going to want to have a list of quantifiable results that you can use for your LinkedIn, your resume, and job applications moving forward. You're also going to want to make sure you have personal copies of any feedback or performance reviews that you've received. If you have client testimonials or certifications or trainings that you've completed, you're going to want to make sure you have documented evidence of all of those things on your personal computer before you leave your company. Then you're going to want to update your LinkedIn and your resume. I know this might give some of you pause. Won't updating my LinkedIn and resume just jinx me? But you don't need to feel like that. You should always keep your resume and LinkedIn up to date at all times, even when you're happily employed. Keeping your qualifications and resumes up to date is something that just goes with the territory of being an employee. Once you have everything updated, you can begin to network just to see what jobs or potential career paths are out there for you. You can start engaging more on LinkedIn. You can attend industry events or start reaching out to former colleagues or join professional groups. The best time to start networking is when you're not desperately in need of a job. And finally, another thing that you can do to help prepare yourself financially for a layoff is to start considering reducing your expenses. Maybe it's time to refinance your car loan to a lower rate. Maybe you want to move to an apartment with lower rent before you lose your job and lose that evidence of employment that you might need to secure your next apartment. Or maybe you have a spare bedroom and decide to get a roommate. Just remember, every dollar that you cut from your fixed expenses is a dollar that you can be putting in your emergency fund and an extra day, week, or month that you can stand to be unemployed without a steady paycheck. So now that we've discussed things to do to prepare in advance, let's talk a little bit about what to do the day that you get laid off. The day that you get called into an unexpected meeting or get that unexpected calendar invite. First, you want to stay calm. Getting yourself worked up into a frenzy of panic or fear is not going to help the situation at all. If anything, it's going to make you look less professional and maybe in the minds of your manager justify their decision to lay you off. You might be shocked, upset, or even angry, but it's really important to stay as calm as possible, pay attention to what is being said to you, and take notes. What you say in this meeting and the decisions you make in the coming hours could cost or save you thousands of dollars. When you go into the meeting, bring a notebook and take notes on what they tell you. Then you're going to want to ask specific questions so you understand the complete situation. Don't worry, if you forget to ask some of the questions that I'm going to share with you, you can always follow up with them in an email later. And they'll likely give you documentation to take home and read. Here are some of the specific questions that you should ask. 1, what is my severance package? Get the exact details and terms of the severance package. If they aren't able to share these with you in the meeting, which is commonplace, make sure you get documentation that explicitly lays them out. Get clarity on what happens with your health insurance. When does your health insurance end? Are you eligible for COBRA? A lot of this will also be explained in your severance package. You can ask if the severance is negotiable, but in my opinion, it's better to follow up with negotiations over email than to explicitly ask in the meeting. You can also ask specific questions about what happens to your PTO, when does it stop accruing, and feel free to ask about any bonuses or commissions owed and how you'll be receiving them. You'll also want to understand whether the company is willing to provide you with a positive reference. If you have any certifications, you'll want to make sure those will be transferred in good standing. Then you'll also want to ask if there are any career placement services that they'll be providing as part of the severance package. As I mentioned before, don't worry if you forget to ask these questions. Sometimes it's better to follow up with them in email so that you don't forget what is said and that you can have the information in writing. During the severance meeting, listen carefully to what they tell you. Make sure you get documentation that explains all of these questions that I've mentioned. And make sure you don't sign anything in this initial meeting. Any documentation that they provide to you, you have a right to review it in detail later, and you also have the right to have an attorney review it on your behalf. Therefore, saying, thank you so much for the documentation, I'll review it and return it with signature is completely okay. So when it comes to the severance agreement, as I mentioned, they're going to give it to you to take away, review, and sign. I said it before, but I'll say it again. Do not sign this immediately. The documentation usually includes a clause that states that you give up your right to sue the company in exchange for any severance payment. Once you've signed it, that's it. You can't go back. And you usually lose your right to negotiate. So here's what you'll need to do. Take it home and review it carefully, every single word. If there's something that you don't understand, get help figuring it out. I highly encourage you to hire an employment attorney. Yes, this will run you a few $1,000s, but in my experience, it's more than worth it. An employment attorney has experience reading, understanding, and negotiating severance agreements just like this, and can also help get you thousands, if not tens of thousands, of additional dollars in severance payments based on their expertise. Some examples of things that you should be able to negotiate include more severance pay, extended health insurance, outplacement services, a positive reference letter, and faster vesting of stock options or retirement benefits. A lot of people think that when they receive a severance package, that's it. But usually there is room to negotiate. And just like when you accept a position, the company expects you to negotiate. And as an employee, you generally have more leverage than you think, especially if you've been with the company a long time. If you're in a protected class, for example, if you're over 40 years of age, if the company is doing mass layoffs, or if there's any reason that you may have a potential legal claim against the company. In these situations specifically, the company is a lot more willing to negotiate with you. And in my experience, companies generally are open to negotiations in order to reduce the bad blood between you and the company. Some really important things not to do is to badmouth the company. Even if you're angry, you're upset, you're sad, you think that the decision that they were making is completely unfair, stay professional. You need the ability to negotiate your severance, and you need them to give you a reference later. The last thing you want to do is act out of anger or desperation and create any animosity or burn any bridges between yourself and the company. And you don't want to post anything that you may regret later or that might be able to be used against you later. Take a breath and let it go. You also don't want to sign anything, and I mean anything, without reading it thoroughly. And I'll say it again, I highly recommend hiring a lawyer to help you navigate this situation. Emotions are high and you might not be thinking straight. Even if you are, you're not an expert at this, most likely. So really consider hiring some professional assistance. And finally, you don't want to make any major financial decisions in this moment. Don't make any big purchases or do any revenge binge spending. Take a step back, lean on your support system, and give yourself time to process. But also don't feel like you have to do it alone. Your family, your therapist, and your attorney should all be helping you through this situation. So now let's talk about what you should do in the days and weeks immediately following your layoff conversation. During this time period, you want to get the ball rolling with your attorney. Send them your severance paperwork and any other documentation you receive from the company before signing it. Work with your employer to negotiate your severance agreement. If the company has set a deadline on your documentation dictating when it needs to be signed by, ask for an extension on that deadline. Once you have a reliable attorney in your corner who can help you negotiate the severance, you can focus on figuring out what the next steps are for yourself. Create a new post-layoff budget and cut any unnecessary expenses. Also figure out what your health insurance looks like. You'll be eligible for something called COBRA, which allows you to extend your employer's health coverage even after you stop working there. This can get expensive, so make sure you work with your attorney to see if negotiating the extension of your health insurance plan at your company's expense is an option. Then, over the next couple of weeks, once you have the ball rolling with your attorney and you're in negotiations with your company regarding your severance agreement, you're going to want to start thinking about setting yourself up for your job search. As I mentioned earlier, you're going to want to update your resume. Don't just focus on your most recent role. Refine the entire thing based on the jobs that you've identified that you want to pursue moving forward. Take time to reflect and figure out where you want your career to go from here. Are you going to continue in the career path that you were on previously, or are you going to make a pivot? Once you've decided this, figure out which roles you'll be applying to and refine your resume accordingly. Also create a target company list. Follow these companies on LinkedIn. Start having coffee chats with people that work at these companies or in roles that you're interested in. And start treating searching for a job like a full-time job. Once the severance has been negotiated, you'll know exactly how long you have to continue your job search and how long you can last on your emergency fund before you absolutely need to secure a role. Having a specific timeline outlined can help reduce anxiety during the job search process. If you find yourself feeling stuck or not making traction after several weeks or months of job searching, you can consider hiring a career coach or a mentor to help you navigate your search. Some other things that you can do from a financial perspective to help you navigate this transition period include being proactive about negotiating any payments that you owe. Call your creditors and try to negotiate payment plans with lower payments or lower interest rates to help reduce your expense burden during this time. See if getting a forbearance or a pause on your student loan payments or any other types of payments is a possibility for you during this time. You can also consider getting freelance or part-time work during your job search to help ease the financial burden. Remember, during the weeks post your layoff conversation, the most important things are to set yourself up for financial success and to negotiate a severance package that maximizes the benefits to you and the length of payments in the coming weeks and months. Rushing to sign your severance agreement without thoroughly reading it and spending the time and effort to negotiate every single point and to make sure you understand every single point in the severance agreement could cost you tens of thousands of dollars. And similarly, rushing into your next role without really taking the time to reflect on what you want to do next, what opportunities are available to you, and setting yourself up for a successful career transition could also be detrimental to your career progress. So take a step back. Even though it's a stressful time, even though you're probably panicked, you're probably having a lot of self-doubt come up in this moment. You're probably stressed about your finances if you haven't done the work in advance. All of these things are okay, but you don't want that emotional turmoil to negatively impact your future. Even if you saw the layoff coming, the emotional impact of being laid off is huge. It can affect your identity, your confidence, your sense of self-worth. But here's something you need to know. That's completely normal and completely understandable. If you weren't negatively impacted by a layoff, it'd honestly be shocking. But there are some things that can help. First, establish a routine. Get up at the same time every day. Have a dedicated workspace to work on your budgeting, your finances, and your job search. If you normally go for a walk in the morning or go to the gym, keep up those routines. When your days are suddenly very unstructured, it can intensify the burden of what a layoff inflicts on you. Another thing that can help is to stay physically active. Exercise helps reduce anxiety, and it can also increase your energy that you're going to need for the severance negotiations and your job search. You also want to stay connected. Don't isolate yourself just because you're in a bad place. Talk to your friends and family. Keep in touch with your former coworkers if they're supportive and helpful. Also consider joining a community of job seekers who are in a similar position to you. Celebrate your small wins. Keep a tracker of how many jobs you've applied for or how many networking conversations you've had this week. Sometimes doing the actions and reflecting back on it will allow you to acknowledge your progress and prove to yourself that you're doing everything you can in your current situation. And then finally, get professional help if you need it. Talk to a therapist that can help you navigate the emotional side of a layoff. And talk to a career coach who can help you navigate the practical side of making a career pivot or navigating the ups and downs of a layoff. And as I mentioned before, talk to an attorney so it can take off some of the pressure of having to figure everything out all by yourself. Here's what I want you to remember. Being laid off is not a reflection of your self-worth. And in many cases, it's not a reflection of your capabilities. In 2025, layoffs are more likely than not about company strategy, economic conditions, and industry changes that have absolutely nothing to do with you personally. Whether you're preparing for a potential layoff or you're navigating one in real time, you have a lot more control over the situation than you think. The people that navigate layoffs the best are the ones who have prepared financially, who stay strategic in their job searches, and who take care of their mental health in the process. If you're currently employed, but you can see what's happening all around us, start taking steps to prepare today. Build your emergency fund, update your resume, and stay networking. If you've already been laid off, remember, everything is negotiable. Consider contacting an attorney to help you through the process. Don't forget to apply for your unemployment benefits when the time comes. And think strategically about your next opportunity. I know it might be tempting to just jump on the next thing out of desperation, but remember your value and your future goals. Thousands of people have been laid off before, and many of them, in hindsight, see it as a blessing in disguise and they end up in a way better position than they were before. Think about this situation as a potential turning point and not the end. Tell me, what is your biggest concern when it comes to layoffs? Have you been laid off recently, or are you afraid it might be coming? Let me know in the comments. If you found this helpful, please consider subscribing to my channel so that I can continue making videos just like this. And if you know someone who has recently been laid off or is at risk of a layoff, please consider sharing this video with them. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.